Welcome to the Daily Devotional for today, Tuesday, March 2nd, 2021. Our topic for today is State of the Vessel. State of the Vessel. And our Bible reading is taken from 2 Samuel chapter 7 verses 1 to 17. But I'll read verses 1 to 8. 2 Samuel chapter 7 verses 1 to 8. And it says, when King David was settled in his palace and the Lord had given him rest from all the surrounding enemies, the king summoned Nathan the prophet. Look, David said, I am living in a beautiful cedar palace, but the ark of God is out there in a tent. Nathan replied to the king, go ahead and do whatever you have in mind, for the Lord is with you. But that same night the Lord said to Nathan, go and tell my servant David, this is what the Lord has declared. Are you the one to build a house for me to live in? I have never lived in a house from the day I brought the Israelites out of Egypt until this very day. I have always moved from one place to another with a tent and a tabernacle as my dwelling. Yet no matter where I have gone with the Israelites, I have never once complained to Israel's tribal leaders, the shepherds of my people, Israel. I have never asked them, why haven't you built me a beautiful cedar house? Now go and say to my servant David, this is what the Lord of heaven's armies has declared. I took you from tending sheep in the pasture and selected you to be the leader of my people, Israel. A memory verse is taken from the same passage, but verse 5, 2 Samuel chapter 7, verse 5. And it says, go and tell my servant David, this is what the Lord has declared. Are you the one to build a house for me to live in? Yesterday we talked about vessels God uses, and we learned that the only way you can be a vessel that God will use or God will want to use is if you are the kind of vessel He wants. If you're the kind of vessel He wants, in other words, you have to be a vessel unto honor. You have to be clean in terms of living a sin-free life and being mindful, watchful of the things that you allow into your system, things you watch, things you listen to, just basically sanctifying yourself and setting yourself aside to be used as a vessel unto honor by God. So we also learned that a vessel is a container used to hold something, a container in which something is placed. And if you look at it from the angle of a ship or a boat, which we also know as vessels, they are used to convey people or items, from one place to another. And that is the same way God uses us. He uses us, He fills us with His messages, information, knowledge, understanding, so many things, messages from Him that He wants to convey to people. And it's very important that when God uses us, when we're being used by God, we should ensure that it is what God is saying that we are conveying to people and not our own, thoughts. We have to be very mindful of the difference between our own ideas and, what God is saying. It is wrong to come and present to people our own ideas as what God is saying. It's very important for us to be mindful of that. If God is using you, if God has spoken to you, let your message be undiluted. Let your message be what God has said, what God has sent you to do, what God has directed you to do and ordered you to say. Your own ideas and thoughts are separate and should be separated from what God is saying. As we can see, Prophet Nathan made a mistake. We're human, we can make mistakes. But he was free of pride, and he went back to David and said, okay, I made a mistake. This is what God said. If you are a vessel being used by God, pride should be far from you, so that in times when you need to, make corrections, or even when listening to God, you'll be humble enough to listen well. And when when you're mistaken, you'll be able to go back and say, oh, I was mistaken, and this is what the Lord has said. So if you're someone that the Lord uses, if you're His vessel, if you're someone through whom He conveys His messages and His will, it is my prayer for you that His grace will always abide with you, that you always know His voice, you always hear His voice, and you'll always understand and convey His will and His will alone. In the mighty name of Jesus. Have a beautiful day. If you like this video, kindly click the like button and share to your friends, your family, and your loved ones. Have a beautiful day.